Morning. The Commerce Committee will come to order. Today, the Commerce Committee is in executive session to advance 4 nominations to the Amtrak Board of Directors, 2 nominees to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting Directors, a nomination for the Marine Mammal Commission, and a nomination for the Federal Maritime Commission, and several promotions in the United States Coast Guard. Earlier this month, on Amtrak reached an all-time high, surpassing its records before COVID-19, and this committee made important changes to the board in the bipartisan infrastructure law to ensure that oversight of Amtrak and it meets the needs of passengers and individual ridership. Today, we make those reforms a reality. We added a disability advocate to the board to ensure Amtrak considers the needs of all passengers. Today, we are considering Mr. Capozzi, a longtime advocate with transportation experience. And after Amtrak tried to eliminate the Southwest Chief Service and dragged its feet on restoration of Gulf Coast route, we worked together to ensure the board had representation outside the Northeast Corridor to ensure that Amtrak focus on the needs of the entire country. So I want to thank my both Democrat and Republican colleagues for that advocacy, including Senator Tester, who asked President Biden to make sure that we complied with this. Today, we are considering 3 nominees from the West, Mr. Batory, Ms. Clegg, and Mr. Shin. If we confirm these nominees, it will be the first time that the Senate has confirmed a majority of members, but we look forward to the Trump nominees as we see them coming through, I'm sure, in January and February. Also, 2 nominations to the Board of Directors for Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They play a vital role in access to commercial, high-quality content on our airwaves. Felix Sanchez, District of Columbia, chairman of the National Hispanic Foundation for the Arts, has been a critical voice for the inclusion and promotion of Latina voices in the entertainment industry, and over the years, his advocacy in this regard has yielded great results. Adam White of Virginia, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, has served on the boards of directors of various nonprofits focused on conservation, free speech, and preserving the rule of law, and he has previously served on the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States. And Lisa Balance of Oregon has been nominated to be a member of the Marine Mammal Commission. Dr. Balance is director of Oregon State University's Marine Mammal Institute, endowed chair of the Marine Mammal Research, and professor of fisheries in the Wildlife and Conservation Species Department. Dr. Balance also served in roles at NOAA and studied ecology and conservation of marine mammals for more than 30 years. Louis Sola of Florida has been nominated to be the Federal Maritime Commission member again, where he has served since 2019. Our committee, through the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, worked hard to ensure the FMC has the tools it needs to ensure ocean carriers play fair and don't leave American-grown products on the docks. The commission already has 1 vacancy, and failing to act on its nomination would deprive it of another member and would only reduce our capacity. Finally, we consider 291 promotions to the United States Coast Guard. I want to highlight the promotions of Paul Miller and Chris Inslee to captain, both who served this committee as fellows, and I want to thank them for their leadership. Paul worked on the committee for 2 different occasions and on the bipartisan Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2024, and we congratulate the fellows on their well-deserved promotion. I now turn it over to Ranking Member Cruz for an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the Commerce Committee's final markup of the 118th Congress, I want to thank you personally for your leadership these past 2 years, and I look forward to our continuing to work together on shared priorities and working together to make the country even more prosperous over the 2 years ahead. This committee is losing a few esteemed members of our committee, and I want to take just a moment to express my appreciation to them. One, this committee is exceptionally proud that we will be providing the next Vice President of the United States, now Senator J.D. Vance, soon to be Vice President, but he will be leaving us, but not going far. And we'll also be losing 2 very important members of this committee, Senator Sinema and Senator Tester. And I want to thank Senators Vance, Sinema, and Tester for their friendship, their comedy, and their commitment to finding common ground on many of the issues that come before us and that come before this committee. Madam Chair, 2 years ago, when you and I began as chair and ranking member, many outside observers questioned whether we would be able to work together effectively. And I think the past 2 years have resoundingly answered that question. This has been a very productive 2 years. We have had an effective partnership. As a result of the election, it appears you and I will be changing seats. And I can commit to you today that we will continue to have a productive bipartisan relationship, working together. This will be a committee that will bring energy to the very important issues within its jurisdiction. And I can also say that it is my intention to adhere to many of the customs and practices that you've established with regard to minority rights on this committee.
Which ones? No, I'm joking.
I was sure you noticed that word many, and that will no doubt be a longer conversation. The American electorate sent a resounding message to Washington on November 5th, and with it a clear and very strong mandate for Donald Trump and the incoming administration. The president-elect has already announced his cabinet, and I think we have 2 stellar nominees already before this committee in former Congressman Duffy and New York business leader Howard Lutnick. We have already begun the vetting processes for Mr. Duffy and Mr. Lutnick and into the next Congress. And we will both thoroughly vet new nominees and, I believe, swiftly confirm them, responsibly carrying out the Senate's advice and consent role. Past practice shows us how to do so. For example, this committee held a hearing on President Obama's nomination of Ray LaHood to be Secretary of the Department of Transportation, and then reported him out favorably the very next day. In the past, this committee and others have often held nomination hearings prior to the inauguration. Under President Biden, both Secretaries Blinken and Yellen had their hearings before January 20th, as did Secretaries Ross and Chow under Trump. What is more, this committee has voted on cabinet nominees, including Secretary Buttigieg, within a week of their hearings. As the incoming chairman of this committee, I intend to follow a similar practice for nominations next Congress and to work to move qualified and competent nominees expeditiously. Alexander Hamilton, the first executive officer to receive the Senate's advice and consent, wrote in Federalist 76 that the purpose of the Senate's advice and consent role is, quote, to prevent the appointment of unfit characters. That is the standard on which the Senate should judge nominees, not whether they have jumped through procedural hurdles. I look forward to working with all the members of the committee in exercising our constitutional role in reviewing President Trump's nominees with every bit of the respect for bipartisanship that has been afforded this past Congress. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz. Because of what you just said, I wasn't sure this is our last hearing. We may end up in the new year having something on those nominees. But thank you so much for those comments, and thank you for recognizing. I'll have at a later time more to say and turning over the gavel to you and congratulating you on that leadership and look forward to working with you. I do think it is an appropriate time to thank the members of the committee who will no longer be serving here, and you're right, they have all added a great deal of input to this committee. Senator Tester, as I mentioned earlier, working on Amtrak and many other issues, particularly in the chips and science area, and Senator Sinema on so much energy into our FAA reauthorization bill and aviation manufacturing in general. Very much appreciated. And yes, I guess that this is an opening. Do we all get to call the Vice President on commerce issues that we want done at the White House? Maybe.
I feel confident that will happen.
Well, so I very much appreciate those comments, and we'll have more to say on working with you in the new year, but I agree with the sentiments. Definitely want to work with you, and think we did demonstrate that and look forward to that leadership. I now will ask for, we have a quorum of 14 people, so we can move forward. Senator Cruz.
Very good. Madam Chair, I move that PN 10, the nomination of David Capozzi to be director on the Amtrak Board of Directors, PN 1693, the nomination of Elaine Clegg to be a director on the Amtrak Board of Directors. PN 1692, the nomination of Ronald Battery to be a director on the Amtrak Board of Directors. PN 2032, the nomination of Lan Hee Chen to be a director on the Amtrak Board of Directors. PN 1568, the nomination of Felix Sanchez to be a member of the Board of Directors of the Corporations for Public Broadcasting. PN 2241, the nomination of Adam White to be a member of the Board of Directors of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. PN 1979, the nomination of Lisa Balance to be a member of the Marine Mammal Commission. PN 1949, the nomination of Luis Sola to be a Federal Maritime Commissioner. And PN 2130, PN 2131, PN 2132, PN 1534-2, PN 2228, PN 2229, PN 2230, and PN 2231, Coast Guard promotions, be favorably reported.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The nominations are reported favorably. We've now concluded our hearing. If there are any members that wish to be recognized on any issues. If not, that concludes our votes today and concludes our markup.
Quick and efficient.
See ya. See ya.
Hearing today, United States Air Traffic Control Systems, Personnel, and Safety. This hearing is of vital importance to ensure the safety of our national airspace, and I want to thank our Chairwoman Cantwell, Ranking Member Cruz, and Ranking Member Moran for their help in making this hearing happen. Too much of our nation's air traffic control equipment, technology, and infrastructure is outdated. Today, we will have an opportunity to hear from stakeholders about the challenges these aging systems create for our air traffic controllers and what needs to be done to keep our airspace safe. We will be hearing from the Government Accountability Office Information Technology and Cybersecurity Director, Kevin Walsh. Thank you for being here. National Air Traffic Controller Association Chief of Staff, Dean Iacopelli. Hopefully I said that correctly. Thank you. Airline Pilots Association President, Captain Jason Ambrosi. Welcome. Professional Aviation Safety Specialist President, Dave Spero. Thank you. And Recent Foundation Senior Transportation Policy Analyst, Marc Scribner. Thank you for being here. Before I proceed to my opening statement, I want to just make a comment that I am saddened to learn of FAA Administrator Whitaker's plan to resign next month. His leadership has been invaluable during this critical time in aviation safety. His oversight of Boeing production has been essential, and I hope the efforts he spearheaded on that front will continue. Our aviation system is safer because of his service, and we are grateful to him for it. I will now recognize myself for the opening statement. In the years immediately following the pandemic, we witnessed an alarming series of close calls in commercial aviation. Last year, we saw a terrifying image of a JetBlue flight attempting to land in Boston that came within 400 feet of a Learjet taking off. In Austin, we saw a FedEx cargo plane attempt to land on the same runway where a Southwest 737 was about to take off. The two aircraft came within less than 200 feet of each other. Our committee held hearings and worked in a bipartisan manner to pass an FAA Reauthorization Act to make our skies safer. The new law, which is still being implemented, makes important investments in air traffic controller staffing and surface detection technology. But we cannot rest on our laurels. Safety requires constant vigilance, which leads me to today's hearing. The safety of the flying public depends upon well-equipped air traffic control systems. Our air traffic controllers work tirelessly to manage our national airspace, but they rely on increasingly outdated facilities and equipment. Following the January 2023 NOTAM system outage, which resulted in 1,300 flight cancellations, nearly 10,000 delays, and a shutdown of the national airspace, the FAA conducted an operational risk assessment to evaluate the sustainability of all air traffic control systems. In September, drawing upon that work, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, conducted its own analysis and issued a report warning FAA actions are urgently needed to modernize aging systems. 51 of our nation's 138 air traffic control systems are unsustainable. That's more than 1/3. According to the GAO, 17 of these systems are critical for safety and efficiency, yet FAA will not be able to modernize some for 10 to 13 years, and as of May 2024, did not even have investments planned for 4 of them. Some ATC equipment is getting so old, service and replacement parts are no longer available. For example, replacement antennas are no longer available for beacons used to determine the location of some aircraft during the en route portion of their flight. Manufacturer support is no longer available for the most common types of equipment and in instrument landing systems, which FAA maintains at our airports. Worse, when FAA replaces aging equipment, the process sometimes takes so long, the new equipment is outdated by the time it actually gets deployed. To be clear, keeping FAA properly equipped is not an entirely new issue. It has challenged lawmakers and administrations from both parties for decades. What's new, however, is the context in which we find ourselves. Our air traffic control equipment and facilities are aging, while our system is still under post-pandemic stress and contending with rising demand. Close calls are still happening. A few notable examples from this year demonstrate the type of safety risks that we're seeing. In April, a JetBlue Embraer 190 had to abort takeoff at Reagan National Airport when a Southwest 737 was about to cross the same runway. In May, an American A319 had to abort takeoff at DCA after reaching about 100 miles per hour because a smaller plane was on a final approach to an intersecting runway. In September, An Alaska Airlines 737 aborted takeoff in Nashville to avoid a Southwest 737 that was about to cross the same runway. The Alaska plane braked so hard its tires blew out, reportedly. There is a growing consensus across a wide range of aviation stakeholders that Congress needs to address this issue. We need modern, sustainable air traffic control systems to keep the flying public safe. And I look forward to hearing from our witnesses about how best we can achieve that. And since Ranking Member Moran is not here for his statement, I will recognize our Chairwoman Cantwell, for her opening statement. Oh, wait, is he here? Oh, Senator Cruz? Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I begin, I want to comment on the announcement this morning that Michael Whitaker will resign on January 20th. I want to thank him for his service. He was confirmed without a single no vote, a testament to his experience, his judgment, and his apolitical nature. When he took the job, I asked him to focus on keeping the flying public safe and to stay out of politics. And he has ably led the agency during a challenging period, and I want to thank him for his public service. On January 11th, 2023, the nation experienced its first nationwide ground stop of air travel since 9/11. This ground stop resulted in roughly 10,000 flights being canceled and days of delays for travelers. What could have prompted this grounding of air travel? It wasn't weather or some airline experiencing operational difficulties. It was because the FAA's NOTAM system, which delivers crucial safety information to pilots, experienced a technical glitch. NOTAM has been used since 1947, and while the technology has evolved from the original telephone system, the current system has not been updated in over a decade. In fact, the most recent change to NOTAM was when the Biden administration changed Notice to Airmen to Notice to Air Missions. I think the American people would have preferred the administration focus on modernizing the antiquated system over obsessing on gendered language. In response to this massive failure, the FAA conducted a review of more than 100 critical systems for air traffic in this country. Notably, of the systems the FAA evaluated, roughly a third of these systems were unsustainable. Even more concerning, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, looked at the FAA's assessment and discovered that the FAA didn't have plans to modernize 17 systems that were, quote, most at risk. This is completely unacceptable. Air traffic facilities and radars need improvement. Based on FAA data, the reliability of the FAA's radar fleet is declining. They are online less often, unscheduled and scheduled outages last longer, and it takes longer to restore service when radar does break down. The United States should be a leader in aviation technology. Sadly, this is often not the case. Not only does the report deliver a harsh assessment of decades of sustainment efforts, it also presents a bleak picture when one considers the funding wasted on doomed projects. For example, the GAO identified one ATC system that needed additional funding for modernization just 2 years after it was completed. Other projects took more than 10 years to complete, becoming obsolete almost as soon as they were deployed. The FAA has long been plagued by difficulties in maintaining and modernizing ATC systems, especially the NextGen project. NextGen was first developed in the early 2000s and has largely failed to deliver on the promised benefits. As projects finish, they quickly become outdated, underscoring the problem of such slow modernization. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 addresses the problems with NextGen, requiring the FAA to finish development of NextGen and to sunset the office by the end of next year. Before the FAA can embark on another wholesale modernization project, the law requires the FAA to present the business case for the project to Congress. ensuring that the FAA conducts the analyses necessary to identify feasible benchmarks for the NAS before starting the next big project. The breadth, scale, and sheer number of these challenges should cause us to question the fundamental structure and operations of the FAA. Is this the right model for air traffic control? Experts across the political spectrum agree that there is a need for stakeholders to come together and discuss the path forward. In November 2023, the National Airspace Systems Safety Review Team, appointed by the FAA, submitted an independent report to the FAA and to Congress focused on improving safety in the NAS, which included evaluating the reliability of the air traffic organization and the NAS. Administrator Michael Whitaker has also said the aviation community should be evaluating alternatives to insulate the agency from political disruptions. I agree. Congress should discuss and consider creative alternatives to ensure that the national airspace system reliably works for all users, particularly as new aviation transportation technology enters the market. The conclusions from the GAO report are numerous, but they all point to one clear conclusion. The status quo of how the FAA modernizes our ATC is unacceptable. Our nation should be the leader in the field, and instead we are stuck with technology that is outdated almost as soon as it is introduced into the airspace. I applaud the thousands of air traffic controllers who safely manage thousands of flights, but broader conversations about how we modernize our air traffic system are desperately needed. The American people deserve an operation that uses its funding wisely, is innovative while ensuring safety, and is also world-leading in reliability. As chairman next year, I intend to focus heavily on the status of the airspace and what changes may be necessary to enhance its efficiency and reliability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member Cruz. I now recognize Chairwoman Cantwell.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth, for having this important hearing this morning on aviation safety. Like you, I'm saddened and surprised to hear of Administrator Whitaker's decision to step down in January of 2025. I know this, that if you want to be the leader in aviation, you have to be the leader in aviation safety. I think Administrator Whitaker was living by that motto. I hope that the next administrator will live by it as well. The next administrator needs to be ready day one to continue the job of restoring the FAA's safety culture and providing real oversight of the aviation sector. This committee has done good work looking at not just what manufacturers must do, but making sure that the FAA does its oversight role and responsibility. So we look forward to this opportunity to continue the work with Chairman to-be Cruz in January and with you, Senator Duckworth, on the very, very important technology challenges that we face in the FAA. And I'll have more to say about Administrator Whitaker later today. Last year's outage of the FAA NOTAM system underscored that the FAA, like airlines, must have a backup system and redundancy. We need to have the FAA meet the same standards. So this hearing, and I want to again thank you for your leadership during the 118th Congress, Senator Duckworth, because serving as an aviator yourself and certainly the intelligence that you bring to these technology issues have helped us solve many issues. Getting aviation infrastructure right, whether it is the air traffic controller system, sustainable aviation fuel, next generation, or important issues like thermoplastics and composites, all of these are about winning the next 100 years of aviation. Our country has been blessed to be leaders in aviation, but we can see the competition coming, and we can see the challenges of implementing safety. According to the Airports Council North America, every dollar invested in aviation infrastructure yields $2.5 in aviation infrastructure growth. And importantly, it helps us stay on top of those aviation safety priorities. We've been spurred to action, obviously, by the horrible crashes that we witnessed with both Ethiopian's Flight 302 and the Lion Air Flight 610, which pushed us to pass ANCSA. And in the aftermath of that, the Alaska Airlines 1282 flight blow-off renewed the focus even more on production quality. On January 12th, one day after several days after the incident, the FAA administrator chose to strengthen its oversight of manufacturing and initiated an audit. 4 days later, Senator Duckworth and I made sure that we petitioned the 737 MAX 7 de-icing system, and Boeing withdrew that and pledged to work on fixing that, and we are still seeing this play out. Today's hearing marks the 12th hearing that our committee has had, building on 7 hearings in the 117th Congress. So it's safe to say, with Senator Cruz's remarks, that we will continue to be laser focused on aviation safety and technology. NTSB Chairman Hamady and others testified on the spike of near misses, close calls that we were seeing, and Chairman Hamady has been before the committee several times to discuss the continued investigation of the Alaska Airlines door plug blowout. We brought in airline CEOs, labor leaders, and talked about the success that we've seen, but what we need to do to keep going past our COVID-19 pandemic considerations. We put our money where our mouth is and set a table for a FAA reauthorization law, and all of the committee worked very diligently to get that over the goal line. Again, I want to thank Senator Cruz for his work on that. The FAA law reauthorized both the FAA and NTSB for an additional 5 years to help keep safe 3 million daily passengers in the United States. It gives the FAA the resources it needs and make sure that the nation's aviation safety regulator does set that gold standard. The law provides NTSB, the nation's safety watchdog, with the highest funding authorization it has received to make sure that we hire the investigators needed to complete their mission. And the reauthorization invests in the well-being of our aviation workforce, giving them new tools, training, and platforms to thrive. So, Senator Duckworth, again, thank you for holding this hearing this morning. I look forward to your continued leadership in this very important role of aviation technology advancement and meeting our safety standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. We will now proceed to witness testimony. First, I would like to recognize Mr. Kevin Walsh from the Government Accountability Office for his statement.
Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting GO to testify on this important issue. The FAA's air traffic controllers rely on 138 systems that monitor weather, conduct navigation and surveillance, and manage communications. More than half of these systems are older than 20 years. Some are more than 60 years old. As a reminder, 20 years ago, Facebook was launched, and 60-year-old systems may have been active when JFK was president. Unsurprisingly, these FAA systems have long-standing issues with the availability of parts and the retirement of knowledgeable technicians. Generally, legacy systems contribute to unmet mission needs, staffing issues, and increased costs. That matches with what we're seeing at the FAA. Further, their prior modernization efforts have been fraught with unrealistic baselines, cost and schedule overruns, unanticipated requirements, and poor oversight. The expected growth in air travel over the coming years will not help those issues. As part of our recent report, we reviewed selected efforts to modernize dozens of air traffic control systems and found that, on average, the FAA took more than 4 years to create a baseline. That is, expected cost, schedule, and performance of a project. We also noted that such pre-baseline investments receive limited oversight from FAA. After establishing a baseline, these modernizations plan to take a further 12.5 years to complete deployment on average. Prolonged timeframes like this will impact FAA's mission. For example, The en route automation modernization was completed in 2015 after a 10-year effort, but it was deployed with outdated technology, which required a major refresh soon thereafter. Back to the 138 air traffic control systems. To its credit, the FAA reviewed the systems to gauge how easy they are to maintain, as well as the operational impact of those systems. The FAA expects to use this assessment going forward to prioritize its modernization efforts. That assessment found that 33 of the air traffic control systems, 24%, had adequate funding and spare parts. The remaining 105 had differing degrees of shortages or potential shortages in spares and funding. Many of them also had limited staff expertise and did not meet mission needs. Confirming those issues, Mr. Spero's organization kindly asked its members some questions on our behalf, and their top issues were also obsolete systems, difficulties finding parts, and staffing shortfalls. Worryingly, FAA's assessment showed that 58 of the systems with shortages or shortfalls have a critical operational impact. Amongst them, we identified 17 that we felt were especially concerning given their age, sustainability, and operational impact. Of those, the earliest of those 17 modernizations is planned to finish in 6 years. Some are planned to be completed in 10 to 13 years, and 4 do not have ongoing modernization efforts. We also found that the FAA's Acquisition Oversight Council had not ensured that investments delivered functionality in smaller segments and had not consistently monitored high risks. We also noted the Council made decisions based on incomplete data and documentation. Despite this, flying is safe, but continuing to rely on these legacy systems diminishes the margin of safety and adds stress to the national airspace. To that end, FAA needs to break modernizations into smaller pieces, deliver functionality quicker, and improve accountability. I hope that this hearing is a catalyst for action, but there is no easy answer or quick fix. A snap of Iron Man's fingers cannot fix this. This will be the work of many years and billions of dollars. This concludes my statement, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I now recognize Mr. Dean Iacopelli from the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
Good morning, Chair Duckworth, Chair Cantwell, and Ranking Member Cruz. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on this important subject. My name is Dean Iacopelli. I'm Chief of Staff for the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, NATCA. I'm a retired air traffic controller with over 30 years of experience, having been assigned to a facility responsible for separating aircraft in and around the New York City area. NATCA takes pride in our role as an aviation safety organization that stands shoulder to shoulder with Congress, the executive branch, and industry stakeholders to ensure that the national airspace system remains the safest and most efficient in the world. The 20,000 air traffic controllers and other aviation safety professionals represented by NATCA throughout the FAA, Department of Defense, and the Federal Contract Tower Program are vital to the U.S. economy, ensuring the safe and efficient movement of millions of passengers and tons of cargo every day. Our mission is to ensure the flying public arrives home to their vacation, their business destination without delay, and while maintaining the highest margins of safety. I know that much of this hearing will be focused on safety and technology as well as funding for facilities and equipment, but I would be remiss if I did not first mention air traffic control staffing, which is the foundation of the air traffic control system. The National Airspace System requires a sufficient number of trained air traffic controllers to meet the FAA's operational, statutory, and contractual requirements. Certified air traffic controllers are also vital to participating in the modernization, equipment, and procedures. We would like to thank this committee for passing the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 with overwhelming bipartisan support. That law includes many critical provisions on hiring, training, and staffing, including directing the FAA to conduct maximum hiring for controllers for its duration. Congress has consistently provided the FAA with the resources it requests through both authorization of top-line numbers and the annual appropriations process. Currently, one of the highest priorities for the FAA is to address the outdated FAA telecommunications infrastructure network known as FTI. The FTI network affects radar displays that depict air traffic in real time and air-to-ground frequencies used to communicate with pilots. The network is largely comprised of copper wiring, which can no longer reliably meet the demand of the National Airspace System. Recently, ground stops at airports in the New York City and Washington, D.C. areas highlight the consequences of a failure of the FTI network. The FAA must transition 4,600 sites away from copper wire and onto fiber optic network to avoid extensive flight delays. The FAA operates more than 300 air traffic control facilities. The FAA's 21 air route traffic control centers were built in the 1960s and have an average age of 62 years old. Fort Worth, Seattle, Kansas City, Chicago, and Houston centers are each between 59 and 64 years old. Our terminal facilities also require attention. The average FAA-operated tower is 36 years old. For example, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport has 3 air traffic control towers, which service one of the busiest airports in the country, the oldest of which is 50 years old. Many FAA facilities have exceeded their expected life cycles. Others require new roofs, windows, HVAC systems, plumbing, and elevators. When major systems fail or facilities have structural problems, it can lead to flight delays or temporary airspace shutdowns. It is implausible to build the air traffic control system of the future in outdated and inadequate buildings. The National Airspace System needs and deserves the best facilities and equipment to move this nation's passengers and cargoes. To sustain many of our legacy systems, as well as to enhance and deploy new safety and modernization programs, the FAA projects that it will need $6 billion annually for its facilities and equipment account, which is a significant increase compared to recent years. Without this funding, along with continued focus on air traffic controller staffing, the FAA will struggle to maintain its capacity of the system, let alone modernize or expand it for new users and emerging technologies. NATCA's continued involvement as a productive and collaborative partner will ensure the FAA continues to deliver these initiatives to industry stakeholders and the flying public on time and at cost savings to the American taxpayers. If NATCA's trained and experienced representatives were not involved, many modernization programs would be delayed and experience cost overruns because they would need to go through costly and time-consuming revisions following the development, testing, and even after implementation. We look forward to working with this committee, the Appropriations Committee, and the incoming administration to build on our successes and continue the safest period in aviation industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iacopelli. And we're now recognize Captain Ambrosi with the Airline Pilots Association.
Chair Cantwell, Ranking, helps if I push the button. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Cruz, Chair Duckworth, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and present the perspective of 79,000 commercial airline pilots of the Airline Pilots Association International. My name is Jason Ambrosi. I'm a current and qualified 767 captain, and since January of last year, I have been president of ALPA, the largest pilot union and the largest non-governmental safety organization in the world. Our association's history of safety and security advocacy spans more than 90 years, and I'm honored to continue that tradition by participating in today's discussion. Congress, as guided by this committee, made important investments in the future of our aviation system when it passed a strong, safety-focused 5-year FAA reauthorization bill. By furthering the federal commitment to modernizing our system, enhancing the air traffic controller and aviation workforce, and investing in technology, we are positioned to remain the global aviation leader. As operators in the system, pilots have a vested interest in the FAA sustaining legacy systems and advancing technological and infrastructure improvements to ensure the national airspace system remains safe and efficient. One of the biggest modernization initiatives in recent history is NextGen. The capabilities that have been implemented with NextGen have increased situational awareness and provided tools to help pilots make safe decisions through performance-based navigation, data communication, and ADS-B implementation. However, the system's potential isn't being fully realized, in part because many airliners aren't properly equipped to take advantage of these updated capabilities. As a result, pilots and air traffic controllers are forced to use workarounds that allow us to operate aircraft with outdated equipment in today's complex system, all of which runs counter to the anticipated benefits of NextGen. Implementing communications, navigation, and surveillance with air traffic management, data communication systems, and ATC automation systems will allow controllers to monitor aircraft improve communication between pilots and controllers for clearance and reroutes, and ensure aircraft line up on the correct runway. To the latter point, ALPA is pleased the FAA reauthorization addresses the need for terminal airspace automation display at small airports that have traditionally operated without these technologies. As I've testified previously before this committee, we have seen several near-miss incidents, including a particularly close call, as you mentioned, in Austin in February of last year, in which pilots were the final line in defense and ensuring safety. Time and time again, similar examples highlight that the presence of at least 2 highly trained and well-rested pilots on all commercial airline flight decks at all times is a major factor in why airline travel remains the safest form of transportation. The human element of pilots working together on the flight deck is irreplaceable. We are able to see, hear, feel, and react to issues in real time. As the Austin incident showed, we save lives. To respond to these concerns and augment the critical role of pilots on the flight deck, the committee has helped ensure that legacy systems, including ASDX, remain fully operational to provide air traffic controllers with timely alerts that prevent accidents and near misses. Similarly, the committee has responded to these incidents with greater focus on runway incursions through the establishment of a policy for no tolerance for near misses, which expands the FAA's focus on improving the ground operation of aircraft at airports, establishing the Runway Safety Council, and supporting discretionary airport grant programs for runway safety projects. Unfortunately, underinvestment, including for facilities and equipment account, is affecting the systems pilots and air traffic controllers use to ensure safe and efficient operations. While Congress has provided the funding requested each year by the FAA during the annual appropriations process, there remains a significant shortfall in numerous maintenance and modernization efforts. Resources have not kept up with inflation and effectively require the agency to prioritize sustainment to the detriment of modernization and infrastructure needs. The FAA must ask Congress for its true needs in order to sustain the legacy systems and make greater headway on next-gen to improve the NAS for pilots and all users. As a current and qualified airline captain with ongoing firsthand experience in the national airspace system, I can tell you that our commercial aviation system is safe, and I look forward to working with the committee and the FAA to continue to improve aviation safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Ambrosi. I now recognize Mr. Dave Spero from the Professional Aviation Safety Specialist for his opening statement.
Good morning. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Cruz, Subcommittee Chair Duckworth, thank you for inviting me to testify on behalf of PASS. PASS represents approximately 11,000 FAA and Department of Defense employees throughout the United States and abroad. These employees install, maintain, support, and certify air traffic control and national defense equipment, inspect and oversee the commercial and general aviation industries, develop flight procedures, and perform quality analyses of complex aviation systems used in air traffic control and national defense at home and abroad. Every day, they work to ensure the safety and efficiency of an aviation system that transports over 2.9 million passengers across more than 29 million square miles of airspace. Their work is essential to the safe and effective operation of the aviation system. Unfortunately, challenges unrelated to employee expertise are limiting that effectiveness. PASS appreciates the opportunity to share information and recommendations regarding air traffic control systems, personnel, and safety. The largest PASS FAA bargaining unit is the Air Traffic Organization and the Technical Operations Unit. There are approximately 4,000 technicians responsible for installing, operating, maintaining, and repairing more than 74,000 radar, communication, automation, navigational aids, airport lighting, backup power, and HVAC systems at FAA facilities in support of the National Airspace System. In February, PASS was asked to provide the Government Accountability Office with information regarding 135 FAA programs and services. To provide accurate, current information, PASS shared that list with Tech Ops employees nationwide and asked them to complete a survey. Their feedback was extensive and concerning. The challenges our technicians face range from dealing with aging equipment to navigating through cumbersome procedures and limited availability of parts. The complexity of the systems, compounded by staffing and training inadequacies, further exacerbates the situation. For instance, outdated technologies like time division multiplexing hinder the swift implementation of new systems, while reliability concerns plague critical systems such as the advanced lighting systems for aircraft runways and fiber optic transmission systems. The maintenance is increasingly challenging as systems become obsolete, necessitating specialized training and expertise. That being said, the technicians also interface with highly technical, state-of-the-art cloud-based solutions, which is often overlooked. The most significant result of our survey was the clear indication that FAA employees, if adequately staffed, are capable and willing to perform the work to ensure successful implementation of new systems and equipment while also maintaining the aging systems as efficiently as possible. The biggest challenge from our perspective is a lack of vision on behalf of the agency. Compounding this challenge is the lack of an appropriate technician staffing model. The FAA has been developing the Tech Ops staffing model for over a decade, yet they are fully aware that today they are short at least 800 technicians. While PASS does not agree that the model is factoring in all the necessary data to determine the optimum number of technicians, it clearly reveals an understaffed workforce. The directives outlined in the FAA reauthorization bill are a roadmap for improvements. However, timely implementation is critical to their success. PASS thanks the lawmakers for including language in the 2024 reauthorization bill directing the agency to install 15 instrument landing systems that are in storage in Missouri. PASS represented technicians are ready and capable of doing this. While the language in the reauthorization directs FAA to install the ILS within 18 months of the law's passage, our attempts to coordinate with the agency have gone unreturned. As far as PASS knows, the equipment, paid for by taxpayers, is still not in service. The FAA is simply not effectively using a key resource to address some of these challenges. The agency is ignoring the skill level and potential of more than 4,000 employees. The resources for the FAA to be effective are there. The FAA is not taking advantage of them. PASS thanks the subcommittee for holding this important hearing. As always, the union stands ready to assist lawmakers and the agency to ensure the safety of the American flying public.
Thank you, Mr. Spero. I now recognize Mr. Marc Scribner from the Reason Foundation for his opening statement.
Chair Duckworth, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Cruz, and members of the subcommittee. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Marc Scribner. I'm a Senior Transportation Policy Analyst at Reason Foundation, a national 501c3 public policy research and education organization with expertise across a range of policy areas, including aviation. Throughout its 46-year history, Reason Foundation has conducted research on air traffic management, emerging aviation technologies, and their interactions with public policy. My testimony today focuses on institutional problems that are undermining efforts to modernize the infrastructure needed to support the continued air traffic volume growth in the national airspace system. GAO's September report adds to the reams of studies documenting wide-ranging problems facing FAA's air traffic control modernization efforts, which have been plagued by delays and cost overruns for decades. I commend GAO for its excellent analysis and support its recommendations. However, I believe the problems facing FAA run much deeper. A decade ago, my Reason Foundation colleague Robert Poole conducted an in-depth study on the relationship between innovation and the structure of and culture at FAA. He selected 7 innovations in air traffic control and did brief case studies on each, observing how each innovation has been dealt with by FAA's air traffic organization and its counterparts overseas. He identified an agency culture resistant to innovation and then developed 5 explanations as to why ATO's status quo bias exists, which were subsequently validated by a panel of more than a dozen expert peer reviewers. First, the ATO self-identifies as a safety agency rather than a technology service provider. Second, it faces a lack of or loss of technical expertise. Third, it faces a lack of or loss of management expertise. Fourth, Excessive agency bureaucracy is labeled as oversight. And fifth and finally, there is a lack of customer focus. These cultural problems reflect an underlying flaw inherent in ATO's institutional design. It exists as a service provider within the National Aviation Regulator that is in turn housed within the Department of Transportation. Its capital needs must compete with broader DOT and executive branch priorities and budget requests, and then rely on inadequate annual appropriations. The ATO's institutional design was historically the dominant model for air navigation service providers globally. This picture has changed dramatically since 1987, when New Zealand became the first country to separate air traffic control from its transport ministry. Since then, nearly all industrialized countries have adopted a public utility model for air traffic control, and separating the provision of air navigation services from the Civil Aviation Authority has been a globally recognized best practice by the International Civil Aviation Organization for more than 2 decades. This organizational separation allows air traffic control to be regulated at arm's length, just like every other aviation player. And it resolves the fundamental conflict of interest of having a regulator also operate a service that it is tasked with regulating. Under the public utility model, air navigation service providers assess cost-based user fees paid directly to the providers. Providers can then issue revenue bonds based on their projected revenue streams, just as airports do today in the United States. It is through predictable user-based revenue collection that air navigation service providers outside the U.S. have been able to successfully finance large-scale capital modernization efforts. Air navigation service providers that operate as public utilities funded by user fees now number 62 and serve 83 countries worldwide. In contrast, just 18 countries besides the United States, mostly developing countries, continue to operate air traffic control as part of legacy civil aeronautics authorities that also regulate aviation safety. The modernization of existing air traffic management infrastructure in the United States continues to fall behind peer countries and is straining from the continued operations and growth of conventional airspace users. The prospect of new airspace entrants raises even more questions about the ability of the U.S. to accommodate the future of aviation. The bottom line is this: successfully modernizing air traffic control technology and service provision in this country will require institutional modernization. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scribner. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. GAO found 17 of the 51 unsustainable air traffic control systems are critical, yet investments to modernize some of these won't be completed for more than a decade. Worse, as of May 2024, there wasn't even any modernization investment underway for 4 of these systems. Mr. Walsh, how worried should we be about these 4 critical and unsustainable systems for which there weren't any modernization investments underway?
So as myself and the other witnesses have said, the national airspace is safe. It is safe to fly. But this is stressing the system, and the longer we wait, the worse it will get. So I am worried, but again, still safe to fly.
Thank you. Mr. Iacopelli, how worried are air traffic controllers about unsustainable critical air traffic control systems for which there were no modernization investments underway?
Well, I'll reiterate what has been said. The national airspace system is safe. We represent 15,000 professional, trained, dedicated air traffic controllers who will do everything they can to maintain the safety of the system. They are the fail-safe, along with the pilots and the technicians to oversee it. So very similar to Mr. Walsh, we believe the system is safe. We are obviously concerned about a number of these issues, not the least of which is the FTI network. But as far as the systems go, we'd like to work with the FAA. We've talked to the FAA about working with them in addressing those issues, and we'll continue to do so.
I feel that it is the personnel, the air traffic controllers, and the pilots who are keeping us safe despite systems and technology that keeps going further and further behind, and you're having to adjust more and more in order to keep the flying public safe. Would that be an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement.
Thank you. I see you're nodding, Captain Ambrosi. Would you like to comment on this? And how do pilots feel about these aging systems and systems that don't have plans to be updated?
Well, as my colleagues have said, the system is safe. But we've never been happy with current safe. If we said in the 1980s that we're safe, but we're safe enough, think of how many accidents we'd be enduring today. So you can never say we're safe enough. We always need to push forward. As Dean said, we do a lot of workarounds to make sure that the system is working as intended and we keep the traffic, the passengers and cargo moving. There needs to be that next step forward in safety where we get the technology that supports the human element, the air traffic controllers, the pilots. We absolutely need that next investment and that push forward to the next level for all of us to continue the safe operation and make it safer.
Can you speak a little bit about how having the 2 pilots helped with the reaction times to some of the near misses? Why it was critical to have 2 pilots as opposed to 1?
I mean, just as we talked about the Austin incident, if there was only 1 pilot there, the first officer wouldn't have identified the Southwest jet on the runway. Let's take the Alaska incident. While it's still an investigation underway, can you imagine having a door panel come off an airplane in flight with only 1 person in the flight deck at that time to manage that situation? Let's take ground operations, surface operations, where you have 2 people at least, some of our international operations more. Somebody needs to have their eyes outside at all times. You're a pilot, you understand that. Eyes outside while somebody else may be looking down at a chart. You know, how do we get from A to B? We don't work at the same airport every day. So we'll go to an airport, it may be our first time there, where we have to, somebody's heads down, another pilot needs to be heads up, looking out and seeing where we're going and monitoring the technology. You know, there's technology right around the corner that will give us more situational awareness on the ground. But if someone's looking at that situational awareness display to see what other airplanes are, that means somebody else needs to be looking out the window.
And in the Alaska airline door plug incident, one of the pilot's headsets was actually ripped off in the middle of that incident from the wind gust. Mr. Spero, if we're stuck relying on these unsustainable critical air traffic control systems for many more years, how much harder will it be for your personnel to maintain them? And are you confident we'll have enough parts and a workforce with enough experience to do so?
Senator, thank you for the question. So I'll start out by saying I like the way Captain Ambrosi talked about workarounds. That is essentially what our folks do every day when they don't have spare parts. They find ways to make these systems work. They look for the spare parts. They have to dig into the FAA system to see if they can get them refurbished. It will become more difficult as time goes on. Moving forward, they have to have the ability and the training. The staffing as well. We've had incidents in various places where we have the equipment, we have the spare parts, yet we don't have the right people in the right place at the right time to restore systems. In Chicago earlier this year, we had a ground stop because we did not have a trained technician available on shift to be able to exclude a software problem that effectively caused the controllers to not know where the aircraft were. Once that person came in, they fixed it in 2 minutes. But all of these things fall together. It's going to become more difficult as time goes on. We have to have the personnel, we have to have the parts, we have to have the training. It breaks our members' hearts to not be able to sustain the air traffic control system the way they want to.
Thank you. I now recognize Ranking Member and Incoming Chairman Cruz for his question line.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to each of the witnesses for being here today on this very important topic. Mr. Walsh, let me start with you. The GAO report paints a grim picture of the FAA's sustainment plans for the air traffic system. More than 100 ATC systems, meaning radar, software, and hardware, were unsustainable or potentially unsustainable. With air travel expected to continue to grow, breakdowns and disruptions will only get worse. Mr. Walsh, your expertise is in procurement and modernization of legacy systems. How would you summarize the current state of air traffic control?
The easy summary is this is what happens if you take if it isn't broke, don't fix it, or perhaps if it's still somewhat working, don't fix it, just sustain it over many, many years. So we're seeing the ramifications of that. We need to invest more money and more funds to get us back on track.
How do you fix it? And I suspect the answer is not going to be just more money, because that answer has often failed to solve the problem.
You are correct. Throwing money at the problem won't fix it. You need adequate oversight. You need the right people in the right place. You need training. You need to have more of the good people that are keeping things running with Band-Aids and patches. So As I said in my opening statement, this is not a quick fix. There is no silver bullet. This is going to be the work of years and billions of dollars and thousands of people.
All right, Mr. Scribner. In your testimony, you mentioned that former FAA employees responded to your analysis of the GAO report. One stakeholder wrote that the ongoing reliability of existing surveillance technology like radar and ADS-B is in jeopardy, and the replacement for these existing technologies likely won't be deployed for 15 years. Why do you think FAA employees reacted so powerfully to the GAO report in your analysis, and what does it say about the FAA's acquisition strategy that it takes 15 years to deploy a new surveillance system?
Well, thank you for those questions, Senator Cruz. On the first, I think the reaction that Reason Foundation received from FAA stakeholders on the GAO report, it wasn't really anything new. A lot of these types of complaints we have heard for many years. I think they saw the thorough and I think the excellent analysis in the GAO report as an opportunity for Congress, for FAA, for Department of Transportation leadership to really take another close look at some of these issues that, again, are not new. When it comes to the delays that they are specifically complaining about, again, those aren't new, and as documented by GAO quite thoroughly, this is quite common. I think especially stakeholders who have contractors who have worked abroad with air navigation service providers outside the country, and then they come back and work with ATO, can see the night and day situation when it comes to technology procurement and technology development. A lot of these, some of the larger ANSPs globally, are able to develop their own technology effectively in-house and then market it globally. That is something that the FAA used to specialize in developing technology in-house, but increasingly it's relying too much on outside contractors without adequate internal controls, and that is helping add to the delays and cost overruns for a variety of systems.
My understanding is that the FAA has concurred with the majority of the GAO's recommendations, ranging from better reporting requirements and budget baseline practices to more regular reviews from the Joint Resources Council. Are those recommendations, in your judgment, sufficient, or should Congress consider more creative solutions to ensure that the U.S. air traffic control system is the best in the world?
As I said in my opening statement and as I detail in my written testimony, I think the problems run much deeper. It is structural. It is institutional design that is ultimately the root cause here. There is a reason why the vast majority of countries of air navigation service providers globally have moved toward the public utility model, the self-supporting public utility model, to avoid some of the political problems that the FAA continues to experience. And we've seen a lot more success outside the U.S. in modernizing air traffic control technologies and practice than we have here. And again, I think it's institutional.
And finally, Mr. Iacopelli, in your judgment, what is the biggest challenge outside of funding facing the FAA's air traffic control system?
Thank you, Senator. I would say, you know, we have recently, I'll answer it this way, we recently met with the COO of the ATO, and we talked about these equipment. Right now, the way it's set up is, unfortunately, that there's a program office that goes out and looks for and acquires new technologies. Then they take that equipment idea and bring it over to the ATO and say, hey, we've acquired this. How do you want to use it? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. We would rather, as the experts in running the air traffic control system, and the COO, Tim Morrell, has agreed, we should get together, talk about what do we need, look at all of the systems that are out there, prioritize what we need, prioritize what would make it better, go through that, and move forward together and saying this is what the ATO needs, this is what air traffic control needs to maintain the safety of the NAS and improve and increase the efficiency of the NAS.
So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Is there anything that prevents the FAA from doing that now?
There is not, and it is a goal that we're going to start doing in the coming weeks and months, certainly in 2025, to move, and this is not a NACA issue, it's an FAA issue, moving those pieces around to put the office that goes out and acquires technology under the ATO, for air traffic control, under the ATO, so that we're acquiring systems that make sense to air traffic control.
Very good, thank you.
Chairwoman Cantwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And following on Senator Cruz's line of questioning, because I think the issue here is we want to know what modernization takes. And we obviously have seen a lot of events, and so the workforce training and hours also matter to us. The experience of those air traffic controllers. If you listen to the Alaska flight audio, it was really critical that the communication between the pilot and the air traffic control system had the best you could possibly have in that situation. So, Captain Ambrosi, you're, let's just say, you're the most active user of the air traffic controller system. You're the most active. So you said something in your statement at the very end. I don't see it in your written statement, but you were referring to the FAA's tendency to do what's required within their budgeting, but not come to the table with the right amount of technology investment. Am I making sense there? You're talking about your resources. I don't know if you have that line and you could reread it again.
If you like it.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Because I thought it was a very telling statement about
I gotta put the
this
glasses
dilemma.
back. Let's see. While Congress has provided the funding requested each year by the FAA during the annual appropriations process, there remains a significant shortfall in the numerous maintenance and modernization efforts. Resources have not kept up with inflation and effectively require the agency to prioritize sustainment to the detriment of modernization and infrastructure needs. The FAA must ask Congress for its true needs in order to sustain legacy systems and make greater headway on next gen and improve the NAS for all users.
Sustainment to the detriment of what was the line?
Modernization.
Modernization. Okay, that is what I wanted you to focus on. So how do we deal with this dilemma? Because sustainment, you know, there was much debate between, I think, NATCA and others about what they thought the FAA should do. But if the FAA is sitting over here looking at sustainment instead of modernization, and modernization is absolutely capable, as the NTSB chairwoman has said, on near-miss technology at the airports or these systems, how can we be better informed that that is no trade-off when safety is concerned? Trading off sustainment for modernization is no trade-off when safety is concerned. How do we better understand this?
Well, I will use this second to do a shout out for Administrator Whitaker and thank him for his leadership. We'll be sad to see him go. We obviously need an FAA administrator that's going to be a leader and be a long-term stable. We need long-term stable leadership at the top of the FAA to tackle this exact challenge. It was under his leadership that the FAA did request a significant increase in budget last year to address the facilities and equipment improvement. But yes, they need to ask for what they need, absolutely.
Okay, I'm not sure I quite got here's how we're dealing with it. We in ANCSA said we want a top 10 trend list. We want to know what the top safety trend concerns are so that you're elevating that to us. We also obviously had the chair testify here, and then acting administrator heard her, and a few days later ended up finally putting out a an order on near-miss technology deployment for most large airports in the United States. But you're asking us to do our oversight role, but it's a lot of times way deep down that there is this disagreement. Now, you've captured it, sustainability versus modernization. But what else can we do to crystallize that that modernization equals safety, and that Congress needs to understand where dollars go when they are prioritizing safety?
All I can answer is by working together and highlighting the problems that may be there. And I believe that the people at the FAA want to modernize. They believe they have a path forward. It's just a case of saying, all right, we got to really ask for what we need and go out and do it. They have the data. There's been miraculous things over the last 2 decades on gathering data.
I have to interrupt. No, not if people are sitting there arguing over formula models for staffing. That's what we argued over. I see everybody nodding. Formula models for staffing. That's what we argued over. Nobody argued over, you need this technology modernization now so that you can prevent X, Y, and Z from happening, or the risk of whatever that risk was, 30% chance, I don't know, in some percent chance of that happening. Instead, it came down to, this is a disagreement over staffing models. And I don't really think that's what it was about. I think it was about sustainability of an organization versus modernization, just as you crystallize it. So anyway, I will stop there, Madam Chair, but I do think this is, we here are, I'm really proud of what our committee has done on oversight, and by that I mean the whole committee has really taken a more aggressive role and position in input and really understanding these. But you guys all have to help us. You have to help us crystallize these opportunities in ways that Congress can fully see the trade-offs without, having to spend hours and hours and hours digesting the nuance here of staffing models. And I don't know, Mr. Iacopelli, if you have any, if anybody else has any thoughts of that, but the way we've dealt with it so far is to use the NTSB and to say, you be the watchdog whistle here and tell us and be louder about it. But we should, look, these technology shifts are major in innovation, and they're also critical to our competitiveness. So we want to get it right, and we want to understand it. So I don't know if I could have one more minute. If anybody else has a comment on that.
If I may, thank you, Senator. So it is an interesting perspective that the staffing question was sustainment versus modernization. On one side was we have a model that barely keeps the system alive and runs it as inexpensively as we can. On the other side, you had the air traffic experts who looked at it and said, if we're building the air traffic control system for the future and we want it to be safe, we need to do these things. And when we talk about sustainment and modernization, I think Mr. Walsh said it, there's not an easy fix, there's not an easy solution. And I would liken it to any, when I talked about the buildings, when I talk about anything that we're trying to improve. If we're installing high-definition TVs in a building that's run on an electric generator powered by gasoline, that it's not sustainable. So we have to have the equipment that's out there work while we modernize. And modernization, in a lot of instances, is improving efficiency. And I know your focus, and I think it's an excellent question, what are the modernization tools that we need that focus on safety? We have to deal with efficiency and capacity, but we need to focus first and foremost on safety. And I think that in our conversations with the FAA, and I also I'll follow up what Captain Ambrosi said, thank Mike Whitaker for his leadership, because he has been, much as I heard from all of you say, he has been focused on safety. It has been an important part of his charge. And we have worked together to try to identify those systems we need to make the system safe, but we have to figure out a way to do both, because we can't let go of the things we have until we have the replacement. And those things take time. But the safety issues in the modernization do need to be separated out from the capacity and efficiency.
Well, I see many of my colleagues here who probably want to jump in on these things, but I would say this committee has the capacity. I think it's demonstrated it has the capacity. So I think we just have to get this debate elevated. It wasn't a staffing model discussion. It was about what do you need to do? And again, Captain Ambrosi being the end user of all of this, you know, I'm sure they were the loudest in saying this is what we need, because they're the ones every day who have to get up there and rely on this.
And with your leadership and the leadership of this committee saying to them, is this really what you need? Does this budget have what you need to modernize and put them on the spot? So
Well, I think air traffic controllers were saying yes, but a larger FAA discussion was saying no. And then we're in the middle trying to digest and help. But anyway, we got what we needed, so which was important, but more to do because technology and modernization are going to continue. Again, thank you, Chair Duckworth, for this very important hearing, and thank you for your leader on aviation in general.
Senator Rosen, very patiently joining us remotely.
Thank you, Chair Duckworth. I appreciate you, Ranking Member Moran. Today's hearing is critically important to all of us, and I appreciate all the witnesses for being here and for your work. You know, safe and efficient travel, I don't have to tell you, I was chair of the Travel, Tourism, Travel, Trade, and Export Promotion Subcommittee on Commerce, and safe and efficient travel is key to Nevada's tourism economy, and it begins with our nation's air traffic controllers, and we do have the safest skies in the world. And I want to build a little bit on what Senator Cantwell is talking about with staffing issues and a lot of these systemic issues that we have with modernization, because today air traffic controllers are working longer hours, longer than ever before, fewer breaks for more consecutive days. And we do agree, every one of us, this is not sustainable and it must be addressed. And in May, the FAA sent a letter on the controller shortage that argued its own staffing targets would produce the same hiring levels for the next 3 years as would the recommended targets from the Collaborative Resource Working Group. So, Mr. Iacopelli, has the FAA sufficiently taken into consideration the Collaborative Resource Working Group staffing model, which NATCA helped inform when crafting its own workforce plan? Because we can't burn out the workforce we have, and we have to grow folks faster than we're doing.
Thank you, Senator. Those are all true and very accurate points. The men and women, the professionals that we represent, are working longer, and they are working harder, and they are handling more aircraft than they have likely in most of their careers, because we do have a relatively new turnover in our workforce. As far as the CRWG goes, the Collaborative Resource Work Group, the ATO, the Air Traffic Organization, has fully embraced it since they were partnered with NATCA in the creation of those certified professional staffing targets, because we partnered and worked through it collaboratively with the ATO. When you get to the FAA, and again, we do thank Mike Whitaker for his service and his commitment to safety, but it has been a challenge convincing the FAA as a whole that the CRWG numbers are the correct number that we need to adequately and safely staff the air traffic control facilities in the country, allow them to take sufficient breaks, that allow us to participate in the modernization efforts and moving the air traffic control system into the future. We are expecting that the part of the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024, again, thank you all for passing that, requires a study of the two different models. In the meantime,
I think we need more than a study. We need to take some action. I think we've studied an awful lot, and somebody's safety's on the line. I have just a little over a minute. I'll take some more of your answer off the record, because I just want to pair this with modernizing our aging technology, as it's going to alleviate some of the strain on the air traffic controllers, because they're working oftentimes with older equipment or things that are not as technically good as they could be. And it also will help expedite and increase air traffic controller graduation rates. And one of these pieces of technology that will help us help the air traffic controllers in their workload are the Terminal Flight Data Manager and the FAA Surface Safety Portfolio. So I'm going to ask you, like I said, I just have about a minute left. What impact, Mr. Iacopelli, you think the TFDM or Surface Safety Portfolio systems had on airports that had installed this equipment, particularly when it comes to controllers' morale and retention and the workers, we partner with technology to be better at our job. And so it's really important, right? It's a partnership between humans and technology that gives us a good safe space, a safe airspace in this regard.
Well, thank you again, Senator. So we did deploy the Surface Awareness Initiative, and I know several times Austin was brought up. That was the first location that we worked with the FAA, and we collaboratively developed this new tool. Again, we call it the Surface Awareness Initiative, and we deployed it at Austin first, and we put it in 7 other locations. It is overwhelmingly positively received. In fact, we went out, the leadership of the FAA, including Administrator Whitaker from the ATO and NATCA, went to Austin, talked to the folks there, and they're very appreciative, and it has made a difference. And we are continuing to we're continuing with our deployment schedule to get that out. It's in 8 facilities now. We're going to another 9 facilities in the coming months. So it has made a difference. And this is an interesting point between those things that are modernization that are for safety and those things that are modernization for capacity. The TFDM is more a capacity tool. All things that we make better, modernize, have some effect on safety. But the Surface Awareness Initiative is a direct tool that directly affects safety.
And if it's a very short answer, how can we help you speed up the deployment of some of these tools that we know help? Because we need to speed up the deployment. It's going to really help us all across this nation. If you want just like a 10-second answer, I could take it off the record, but what do you need to help speed up your deployment schedule?
What we need to do is be adequately funded so that the FAA doesn't have to choose between deploying this and something else and make those prioritization issues.
Thank you very much. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Walsh, it is critical, as you've talked about in this hearing, that our safety and security, that we upgrade our aviation system. The NOTAM system outage way back, as you know, caused a delay, major delay, and in July, the FAA confirmed that there's now a backup system in place, but there's still more work to do. Could you talk about the challenges airports and air traffic control have faced when trying to transition away from their old legacy systems?
So I think the National Airspace System Safety Review Team did a great job in their recent report on the topic, and I would highlight some of the things that they said. In particular, it's very difficult right now to turn off the legacy systems once you have built the new system that is intended to replace it. We have a lot of users, in particular, if you read between the lines, the military, that does not easily transition over to newer technology, and FAA is then left holding the bag with 2 systems rather than 1. And then they have to sustain both of those systems rather than focusing entirely on their new system, which again takes up an increasingly large piece of the not growing pie. So I think as our air traffic controllers, our pilots, and our technicians work with these older systems, it makes their life harder. And again, it makes it more upon them to catch things when they go wrong or when these systems have outages.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Iacopelli, thank you for being here. As you know, we have the shortage of air traffic controllers. We have a major hub in Minnesota. I know how important the air traffic controllers' work is, and we've seen flight disruptions and the like. The bill that we passed back in May with Senator Cantwell's leadership, the FAA Air Traffic Controllers Hiring Act, focused on boosting FAA training capacity. Do you believe that we should focus on training and hiring? How's it going? What's the latest?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. And absolutely, yes, we need to continue to focus on hiring. We know that the FAA has just met their hiring goal for the fiscal year, and so we're in a new fiscal year. And we, based on the FAA Reauthorization Act, that they're required to do max hiring. And we have partnered with the FAA, I should say, and our public affairs departments to go out and promote that. If you ever scroll through Facebook, you see hundreds of air traffic controllers promoting this profession and how great it is and how much they want people to get in it for two reasons. One, it is a great profession, and two, we need more air traffic controllers. We do need to focus on the training. We have recently agreed with to some new initiatives within the FAA to focus on training, increase the success rate, the TSS provision in the FAA Reauthorization Act, the training simulator. Again, it's a funding issue. It's been authorized. We need the we need the appropriations part, and hopefully the FAA is going to ask for the right amount of money. So again, we're not choosing between which thing is more important. We need all of it.
You know, the air traffic control tower up in Duluth is 70 years old in northern Minnesota. The weather is rather harsh there. We also have a incredible guard base there, and Cirrus is right near there. So there's a lot of it's this great synergy of air travel and air manufacturing. It's one of the 3 oldest towers in the country. It doesn't make the line of sight requirements. It's in need of significant repairs. It actually gets underwater somehow, even though it's on a hill quite a bit. And could you talk, we got some funding for it, but not enough to get it going. So is the biggest obstacle here infrastructure? And just talk about the rural communities. And this isn't even that rural, right? It's quite a big city, Duluth, Minnesota, where Bob Dylan came from.
So we have heard from...
Biopic is coming out, so I want to get it on everyone's mind.
We have been working, using the bipartisan infrastructure law as the base to go through and look at a lot of our facilities. And I mean, we have our folks sending us pictures of flooded basements, mold, decay. When I mentioned plumbing, just upgrading the plumbing in the facility so that the restrooms and the water work so that our folks who are air traffic controllers can do that. I know up in Alaska, they have space heaters. We've gone through where the air conditioning this past summer in several locations around the country just stopped working. And we had to have our folks in the elevator stopped, and it was 90+ degrees in the tower, and they had to go to remote sites. So all of those little things in those rural communities where you don't hear about it, doesn't necessarily make the news. We certainly hear about it. I'm assuming you hear about it from your constituents. So it is an enormous task to go out and upgrade the entire infrastructure of the national airspace system. And I think Mr. Walsh said it. It's not a quick fix. It's not something that happened over the past 3 years. It's something that has been building for 50 years of if it's not broke, and I forget how you said it, but if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it. If it's working, that's good, let's keep going. And I don't want to take up too much time, but we have radar sites right now that the FAA is going around trying to decommission because they don't have the means by which they can maintain it. That is not improving safety. That is simply a matter of taking down a radar site so you can use those parts someplace else because they don't have the means by which to maintain those radar sites, and that's another big issue we're going through.
Okay, very good. Anything else, Captain, that you'd like to add?
I think Dean covered it pretty well there, but it's an all of the above strategy. We need to keep it working so we can keep moving passengers and cargo, but it's time to make that next leap and finally put the people, the resources, the money in place to move the safest aviation system in the world. But we need to keep it that way and move it forward. So I would agree with everything he said.
Okay, thank you. I'll send questions in writing. There were many things going on today around here, so thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I hear they're tough in Alaska. What about those space heaters there, Senator Sullivan?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's always good to follow my friend from Minnesota. Has similar issues, cold, rural, needing space heaters, needing upgrades. We don't have, was it Bob Dylan? We don't have him, but we have a lot of other famous people. I want to thank the chair for holding this really important hearing. And Mr. Iacopelli, I want to begin with you first, doing a shout out to all the air traffic controllers across the country. In Alaska in particular, these are really heroes in my view. They keep us safe. We have a lot of aviation challenges in Alaska. You guys do such a great job. I'm a giant fan of your workers and members. And, you know, even the whole issue, a lot of Americans don't know if you're flying to Asia, you know, leaving from Chicago or somewhere, you come over the Alaska airspace, our air traffic control kind of gets them safely to Tokyo or Seoul. So just, I really want to just do a great shout out to them. And I want to talk to you, you know, as we were developing the FAA reauth, I supported the Air Traffic Control Hiring Act to require the FAA to set a minimum of hiring targets for new air traffic controllers. We got a lot of this in the bill, but is there more Congress can be doing on this really important issue?
Well, thank you, Senator, and I appreciate the compliment to our brothers and sisters who work up in Alaska. You know, the Reauthorization Act and the requirement to conduct max hiring is the success of that depends on having it sufficiently funded. So we're hopeful that the FAA requests the money that they need to continue the hiring. We are working with the FAA, and I'm sure you're aware, sir, that we have expanded to the enhanced CTI program, the College Training Initiative. So we're working on that. We are working on a number of initiatives in-house, if you will, to enhance and improve the training, to enhance and improve the success rate, most importantly, of that training. Because anytime we take someone, we know if we hire 2,000 people, we're not getting 2,000 through our training course out in Oklahoma. Then once they hit the field, again, there's more attrition. But to maintain that focus and not lose sight of the importance, and again, it seems that we have all priority 1A things here. Everything is a one priority. But to continue the focus and ensure we have the funding to stay with it, because it's not a one-year task. It's a multi-year, long-term commitment.
Yeah. Well, thank you on that, and I again, we'll continue to stay very focused in this committee on those issues. Captain Ambrosi, it's good to see you again, sir, and I want to do a shout out to your members too. They're great Americans. A lot of them live in Alaska. We have more pilots per capita in any state in the country, as you probably know. More veterans per capita too. I know our chair cares a lot about that per capita. But we also have challenges with regard to having enough pilots, particularly for regional airlines, because they get recruited up to the major airlines so quickly. And so one of the things that I worked on with you and others that had bipartisan support and both labor union support and industry support was focusing on education for our pilots. And one thing that just kind of, I just don't understand why it still exists, that we have this kind of unequal treatment for loan treatment between traditional college students and students seeking a professional airline pilot who shoulder very costly loans for training. So I'm trying to fix that. As you know, we had a bill that unfortunately didn't make it in the FAA reauth that I thought was kind of a no-brainer to get in there to help our pilot situation. Can you explain the barriers a prospective pilot faces for assessing flight education and training and what you think Congress should be doing to right-size the existing programs? And oh, by the way, on federal loan payback, you know, the pilots who go through this kind of training, they get federal loans, they'll have a great record of paying back those loans, unlike some of the others who don't, because they'll go get an aviation job or a pilot job, and those are good paying jobs. So what more can we do to level that playing field?
Well, Senator, good to see you. Thank you again, as you did with the shout out for our members. They work hard every day.
Yeah, we have a lot in Alaska, as you know.
Keep our people safe. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. As I may have said in former testimony that I would not be able to be a pilot today with what it costs.
Yeah.
You know, it's gotten out of hand. So it's a wonderful profession. I'm proud to be an airline pilot, and we need to do more to open the doors. We have a robust pipeline. The schools are full, but there are the best and brightest still out there that don't have the resources and able to do this.
Do you think that limits the number of pilots in America just because it's so expensive?
It certainly limits, it takes away the ability for a lot of people that would like to get into this profession if they don't have the ability to get the resources, the federal loans that could help. It doesn't make sense that if you can get those loans for other professions, that we can't do it for ours, right?
Get a philosophy degree, you can get a federal loan, but pilot training, you can't. This seems backwards.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for your leadership on it. I believe that opening the doors of opportunity for all those that would like to get into this profession it is an important step in the right direction.
Great, and Madam Chair, well, I want to work with you on that too. I know you care a lot about this issue. I see my time's expired, so I will submit additional questions for the record, but the one that I'm going to submit, just to make a very quick comment on, is this idea of air traffic control privatization. I know we have differing views on the panel, but I'm going to submit that. I do not support that. I think that the small rural airports that my state has an enormous number of, they're going to kind of lose out on any kind of, privatization that would be run by a private entity. I think in this case, the government is best equipped to make sure smaller airports, smaller populations who need infrastructure don't get missed out. So I'll submit that for the record, Madam Chair. I appreciate the hearing. Thanks again.
Without objection. Senator Welch?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I share the concern about small airports that Senator Sullivan just mentioned. I want to start by thanking Mr. Whitaker. He had a short time, but a big impact. And it's extraordinary to hear from everyone, from Senator Cruz to folks who are on the panel, paying tribute to the excellent job he did as the FAA administrator. And I'm very, very sorry to lose him. We're proud of him. He's a Vermonter, but proud primarily because of the extraordinary job that he did in creating confidence among all of the folks who are keeping our skies safe. I have a few questions, Mr. Iacopelli. I want to ask you, on these shortages that we're trying to deal with, I know the FAA is really hard at work at implementing changes to deal with the air traffic controller shortage, and it takes time, especially 3,000 ATC staffers overnight can't be hired. But the ongoing shortage is really hurting us in Burlington, Vermont at the Leahy International Airport in Burlington, and it's resulted, we understand, in the slot waivers for the New York area airports. That's been really detrimental to us, but also to other small airports around the country. Last year, JetBlue terminated service routes from Leahy Burlington International Airport to JFK. That's a real problem for us. We had a lot of folks that wanted to come from JFK to Burlington and from Burlington to JFK. So I want to just ask, what's your confidence about the capacity for swift implementation of the ATC workforce provisions, included in the FAA Reauthorization Act? And will the FAA be able to lift the New York City slot waivers by the end of the waiver period, which is slated for October 2025?
Thank you, Senator. To start with the slot question, we don't know. I don't know that they'll be able to do that. I don't know if it's based solely on staffing or if there's some commitment with the airlines. We're not, NATCA's not involved in the.
But we're sort of in it now. And do you have any assessment of the progress that's being made that gives you any capacity to be confident that the
as far as the training
will be met?
The training and hiring of air traffic controllers is an ongoing effort. It is going to take years of sustained focus to ensure that we continue to hire. Now, the FAA reauthorization bill requires max hiring for 5 years because that's the length of the bill. And honestly, if it was a 10-year bill, it would have to be 10 years. Because as we hire and we lose through attrition, as we hire, we lose for retirement and those who are unsuccessful. But to your question, Senator, we are focused along with the ATO and the FAA in ensuring that those who do get hired receive the best quality training we can to ensure the most success that we can to address those issues you're talking about.
Well, I'll just implore you to stay on it because you weren't able, obviously, and I respect that, to give us confidence that those slot waivers will be dealt with so that we can get service back to New York City. So that's really, really important to us in Vermont. There's also, with the smaller airports, the need for upgrades of equipment and facilities. At our airport in Burlington, the tower was built in the 80s, and it's considered to be relatively new for a small airport. But we've had significant expansions at the airport, and at the tower, you can't see the entire airport. We've got $17.8 billion in the FAA Reauthorization Act to fund the modernization of key technologies. My question to you is, as we continue to implement the FAA Reauthorization Act, how can the FAA better coordinate with smaller regional airports to ensure its technology and facilities are being consistently maintained and upgraded?
Well, thank you for that, Senator. I think the best way for us to do is continue to stay involved with the FAA and having our experts work with the FAA, whether it be in the ATO or any other line of business that oversees the deployment of new technologies. We do have a good number of professionals out there working with the FAA now and their counterparts who are either in the engineering or the other modernization departments. And we do make sure we are focused on where does it need to be deployed and are we getting it to where it needs to be as quickly as we can. But there are limitations to how much we can get accomplished, as was previously discussed.
Good, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you to our witnesses for your participation today. They have called a vote, so we are going to end the hearing. The hearing record will remain open until January 13th, 2025. Any senators that would like to submit questions for the record should do so by December 20th, 2024. I, again, thank the panel for being here. I thought there was a very good discussion. We ask that responses be returned to the committee by January 13th. And that concludes today's hearing. Thank you.